Hi, everybody, and welcome to Circle of Fellows for August 2024. I am Shel Holtz. I am Senior Director of Communications for Webcor, which is a general contractor and builder here in the San Francisco Bay Area and throughout California and now in Nevada. And we are delighted, my fellows and I, to be here to talk about artificial intelligence today. I am going to ask each of the fellows to introduce themselves. And Sue, let's start with you.
Hi, everybody. Sue Human. I'm located in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Been in communications for more than 40 years. The artificial intelligence started way back when I tried to figure out what I was doing. And now there's machinery to help me figure that out. I'm just kidding. Happy to be here.
Great. Adrian, you're up.
Excellent. I'm Adrian Cropling. I'm in Melbourne, Australia, hence the accent. I've been in communication not quite as long as Sue, but just clicked over 20 years in my own consultancy, Cropling Communication, and I'm the founding director of the Centre for Strategic Communication Excellence and past IABC chair. So great to be with you today.
Great to have you with us all the way from Australia. Mary, you're next.
Hi, I'm Mary Hills, and I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona. And I am more in Sue's range in the field than Adrian's. So somewhere right around there. I am a professional scholar in residence out of Loyola University and soon to be Benedictine, or at least looking at Benedictine. So, but thrilled to be here today and talk about AI, which I really have been somewhat involved in since 2012 in product development. So it'll be interesting to hear what we come up with.
Yes, it definitely will. And Robin, it's your turn.
Hello, I'm Robin McCaslin from Dallas, Texas, where it is very hot today. I feel like I say that every time I'm on a Fellows podcast. It's always hot here. And I am Senior Director of Corporate Communications for a major healthcare insurer in the United States. And I have to do the math. I think I've been in our profession about 35 years, mostly in high tech and healthcare. And I am a past chair of IABC and happy to be here.
I've been doing this since 1977, so I'm not going to do the math in my head because I'll get it wrong. Now, AI is something that everybody is talking about. You can't open a publication or go to a website or a discussion group without seeing AI front and center. I was intrigued recently to see that Gartner, on its technology hype cycle, has moved it from the peak of inflated expectations to the trough of disillusionment. And I think that's characterized by some of the headlines we've seen out of the world of investment, with a lot of these investment firms wondering if it's ever going to produce the kind of revenues that justify the investment that's going into it. But for those of us in communication, the utility is huge. And I think there's a lot to talk about and some ground to explore that maybe those who are watching live have not heard, or those who are listening to the podcast version or watching the video replay later haven't considered. So I'm looking forward to the conversation. Let's start with the name, the label that was given to this installment of Circle of Fellows, Raising AI. What are we talking about there? Adrian, I think, weren't you the one who came up with that?
It's actually Mary. We've had this conversation for a while, and I'm sure Mary will kind of jump in on this one. But this is something we've been talking about for a while in the centre. And Mary, myself, Amanda Hamilton Atwell, we got together and we have started exploring an AI tool. And one of the things that we have found with the public AI, things like ChatGPT, is that it makes stuff up, right? We all know about the hallucinations of AI. So when we're using it for our purposes, there's a whole lot of can't trust the content entirely, have to do an awful lot more editing, thinking, fact checking. So the whole idea now, and this is something that we've been been working with an organization out of the US, is that we need to take AI in its most junior form and teach it. So it's about getting the expertise into the AI so it becomes absolutely more usable, without making this stuff up. And it's a little bit like, using within the company firewall too, that it's only using your information. But I guess AI is only as good as the information that you give it. So rubbish in, you get rubbish out. So as much as we've got carried away about how clever it is to create and design and research and so on, we've just got to be really careful that it's not churning out a whole lot of stuff that is really wrong, or the wrong facts, the wrong type of research. So this whole concept of we've now sitting in a position of the teacher, and that's why we talk about raising AI. Mary, I'm sure you'll pick up a little bit more on that one.
Well, and one of the things I had found, I started like in 2012 working with a client, and Hyman Hills worked really closely with Purdue Technology Center in Indiana. And one of the things that we did were we would support startups that were looking to build, and we would serve them, doing marketing, research, those kind of things, comms. And so it was really one of these clients and that I began working with. And so at first, when I started working to say, okay, so what are we doing? We established what I said was easy, was really the comm and the marketing, but then all of a sudden it was the product development. And I looked at the product development and I said, okay, so if I wanted to do a marketing plan, what is it going to have to understand? And so I started putting, the knowledge base together. And then I found that the knowledge base wasn't going to be enough, because this tool was like going off on its own, right? And I'm kind of sitting there and saying, well, wait a second, you aren't doing it right, and what it boiled down to, I started thinking to myself, I gave this tool a name because it was becoming an entity to me. And I would say, but listen, it was missing what I always called the philosophical foundations of life. And so I said, oh my God, do I have to start teaching this thing Kant? Do I have to start teaching it Aristotle so it knows how to use logic too? Don't I just give it the information? And that's when I said it started reminding me of raising kids. That what do you have to give it first? Then show mastery of that. Then what do we give it next? And so that's the way I started saying, I felt like it was kind of like a child, another child. Yeah.
Great. Well, so how are you all using AI on the job these days? I've got a lot, this long list of questions to ask. And by the way, for those of you who are watching live, feel free to enter a question. We can see them. We can share them on the screen and get the benefit of the expertise of this panel to answer your questions. Also, your comments, observations, experiences. But you can be part of this rather than a passive observer. But I'm curious, how have you taken AI beyond what most communicators are using it for right now, at least based on what I hear when I'm out doing a presentation or talking to people, which is just a writing assistant. What are you doing with it beyond that?
In our work and personally, we use it as a research tool. It saves me a lot of time, but I still have to be careful about what it's serving up to me. So for example, if I'm researching a particular topic, and traditionally I would, way back in the day, you would go to the library, you would go look at books, you would do a search online, but you keep putting in different search terms. Depending on what you put into ChatGPT or other tools, it brings back a whole lot of stuff to you. So I don't necessarily care about how it's aggregating it, but the fact that it's sending me all this stuff. I know reputable sources. So if it's sending me a lot of information, I can say, okay, that to me is, I'm dismissing that. I don't think that's legit. Then there's other things coming in from other sources. I'm going to go follow that thread. I'm going to go follow that thread. So I say there's a lot of time when I'm trying to pull together some knowledge on a topic, and then I have to suss out which ones I think are the ones that are legit and truthful and honest. And then I can do what I need to do from there. So it's a big time saver, which is great. I don't use it for writing yet. I mean, I've done it for fun, but not in the workplace. But using it just to consolidate research and save you time that way, it is a big help.
I would echo that, Robin. I think we've used it for research. It's a great prompt, but it doesn't replace critical thinking, and it doesn't replace your ability to ask the right questions and then gather the information. I think one of the things, Shell, that scares me about AI is the algorithmic bias that we're starting to see. And the more that you search a term, it learns what you're looking for, which can be good and bad. I mean, it can help you if you're doing a deep dive, as Robin might, into healthcare, for example. That's great. But I think that what can happen is it can become an echo chamber, and you can only hear or see things that the algorithm thinks you want to see. And that's a bit dangerous for me in terms of just making sure that we're getting diverse inputs, diverse perspectives, that we're taking the time and not just using this information that it churns out, but really putting some thought into what it is we're getting and if we need to seek out other sources.
I think for me, I've same as the others. With it's using it for that content generation, creation, research. Absolutely, it's been useful. I have to say the scary moment was when I first started using AI, and when I was thinking about it from a strategic communication point of view and trying to develop plans. What I found with AI is that it did have that bias because it thinks that communication professionals just write. So the more you talk about, and even if you ask questions around the job of a communication professional, it comes back with a whole lot of reference to writing and creating content. And so there is some gap when it talks about, you know, those biases that it's coming back with. What I found, though, is really handy is the fact that it creates efficiencies. So if we use it in the right place and we're very conscious of the prompts that we give it, and I think now we've all kind of settled into using AI for, you know, creating content. We've all discovered that writing the prompt is absolutely critical. So those instructions have to be really clear in terms of what you want to get out of it, how long you want something, where it needs to get its sources from. So again, better quality input gets you that output that you really want. And that's why, you know, jobs of the future, things like prompt writing or prompt engineering is critical skills of the future. And this is why we talk about the raising AI, because we're actually having this conversation to educate and hopefully take out some of those biases. But when it's hard coded in there, you've got to be really careful. So this whole role, and we'll talk about this later, of a communication professional needs to be right from the start of thinking about what AI is going to do for your organization and how it's being used and so on. But we'll get into that one later.
Mary, anything to add?
You know, I agree. I think that the one thing that we need in the communication field is to understand how AI does get raised. How does AI develop? And so even when it's given information, for instance, in ChatGPT, if you give it too much, it goes bonkers on you, right? All of a sudden, it's coming back and you have the hallucinations, right? And you're like, wait a second. And you go, oh, I got to pull back. And so there is such a process involved with working. And for the content, we're talking generative AI, right? We're not talking traditional artificial intelligence. We're talking, it is generating something that it thinks is logical and reasonable. So I think that you have to kind of tell it what you want. And the whole idea of how do we ask questions? You know, in fact, I know when Adrian and I have worked on the little AI guy that we're working on now, you know, you begin to say, like, when it gets it right and you like the result of what comes in, you actually say, thank you, great job. You know, like you feel as though you're giving it that positive reinforcement. And I said, so you really do have to think of it as the communication professional is actually the one that is responsible for whatever that output is going to be.
Yeah, I think it's one of the best pieces of advice I've ever seen on AI was to treat it like a person. No, it's not, but treat it like it is. You'll get the best outcomes. Let's run through some of the comments that we've received as we've been chatting. First from Bonnie Caver. I hear you, Adrian. To battle that, I put in the job task analysis from the Global Communication Certification Council for the SCMP and CMP. That's the Strategic Communication Management Professional and the Communication Management Professional, to write job descriptions, hoping to train it beyond writing. And she adds that there's a process to feed it to your own organization's reputation and out-talk misinformation and bad outputs. Before we move on from those comments, any thoughts?
Yeah, and it's great that Bonnie's there and has made those comments, because the thing, and Bonnie and I have been talking about this. Bonnie worked really, really hard with the Global Alliance to put together the responsible use of AI, and we've introduced a responsible use guide as well. And we talk about the principles, and Bonnie did an awful lot of work in talking to the different associations globally to put together the principles around what we should be doing. The frustrating thing that we're finding is that we're stepping into the tool as communication professionals and going, this is how we can use it and this is what we need to do. But the issue is AI is already in the market, being used in organizations, but we're not taking that look at the responsible use of AI and changing the role that we do as communication professionals when it comes to supporting organizations in how, why we should be using it, the ethics around AI. And so there's a little bit of fear there around how we step into that. So I think there's a whole lot of work that we need to be doing as communication professionals in understanding our role and the context of using AI within organizations, because we can get carried away with a nice shiny tool, but there's some practical realities. It goes back to Sue's comment around the bias that we get into AI. We need to be there with the communications hat on, going, how do we help train AI? How do we help train the organization for the use of AI to make sure that this is a very, trusted tool or set of tools that we use within an organization?
I think you've raised a really important point around trust, Adrian, because clients hire you or you are hired to be the in-house consultant at an organization, and the organization trusts you. They trust your advice, your experience. And when you start to say that you're using AI to support communication, you have to be really careful about how you introduce that concept, because there are people who believe that AI is just a shortcut. It's doing the work for you so that you can, go fishing or whatever it is you do. You know what I'm saying? And you can quickly lose the trust that you have established as that communication professional within your organization. I mean, your role is to be that strategic advisor. And if it appears that you're trying to substitute AI for your good thinking, you're going to be in a world of trouble. So there's perceptions around AI as well, besides the reality of using it.
The classic example is things like LinkedIn. What we're seeing in LinkedIn, how you get your badge for being the best in the field for this knowledge. Yeah. People are using AI, they're going to AI, and you can see they almost directly copy from a chat GPT into the posts, and suddenly they're getting these I'm an expert in. No, you're not. You just get the content from the market using AI, and you popped it in LinkedIn to boost your popularity.
But isn't that that's no different than, throughout the course of all of our careers, there are people who before AI would just say, I'm an expert in.
Yeah.
You repeat it enough and you put yourself out there all the time. Not everybody, but some people are going to go, oh, this person's an expert. I'm going to follow. I'm going to, and it's like, are they though? Like,
It's also true, I think.
Done the work, I don't know. They just like to talk about it a lot, and they put that badge out there, and so some people will believe it.
I don't think that there's a tool that has been invented that somebody hasn't figured out a way to abuse or misuse. And AI is no different. So I think we just need to adhere to professional standards. Before we continue, and there are more comments, I do want to note to whoever posted the last comment, I inadvertently deleted it because I thought that it was Bonnie's, and I realized there were still 2 of Bonnie's there. So if you can re-enter that, I would appreciate it. In the meantime, though, we have 2 from Susan Straub, who says, I used it to write a birthday note to my husband. It was hysterically spot on. And then she says, otherwise, I use it for brainstorming, research, or in trying to say something in a different voice. And then we have a question from Kobe Dog 31. How does AI inspire your creativity? And I find this interesting because I saw some research that says among people who are not very creative, it makes them more creative. Among people who are already creative, it actually has the opposite effect. So I'm wondering, in answer to this question, do you find that it does inspire your creativity?
On a personal note, I find it helps with writer's block. So if by running out of the ideas, popping it out to AI and going, look, I'm trying to find a creative title for XYZ, and I give it a little bit of context, it'll come back with a whole list of stuff. And 9 times out of 10, I go, oh, that one. And then it may spark that extra bit of creativity to change it slightly. Sometimes you look at it and you go, oh, gosh, what did I tell you to do? Because this is just shocking. But conversely, I've also found that once you're presented with the information, suddenly you're engaging with that, and you've stopped the creative process because you go, oh, that'll do. I've stopped thinking now. So I can see where it works in both instances.
And for me, it's so I'm going to make up an example. Let's say I'm writing something like a passing of somebody important in your organization, or something, or a difficult situation, civil unrest in your city, whatever, and how it's impacting your workplace. I will look to it for sentiment. Like, I know what I want it to feel like when you read it, but I may be having trouble with the words and I don't want it to sound canned or whatever, but I'll go look at, like, what are things like that? What are other speeches? What are other things that people have produced in times like that? I don't need to reuse those words, but it gives me the creative, like, oh, there it is. Okay. And then I have my own words, but I just need that little push sometimes to say, how am I going to say this in a way that's actually going to resonate with people, evoke feeling from people. So I do find it helpful for that. If I'm having trouble coming up with something that isn't the typical canned response, that's helpful.
It's a really great thesaurus.
Yeah,
it is. There are times where I know there's a word I want to use and I'm not getting it. So I'll just go to one of the frontier models and say, this is what I've written. This isn't the word I'm looking for, and I can't get it. What's the word I'm looking for? And 9 times out of 10, it's going to give it to me. I'm going to go, that's it.
Yeah.
So it's really helpful when writing from that perspective. But one of the things we haven't talked about is the synthetic media angle. We've just been talking about the chatbots, but for instance, I manage an intranet, or I should say my team manages an intranet, and we have started putting in audio versions of all of the articles. And that's just a matter of copying the article, pasting it into an 11 Labs field. I think I pay $14 a month for 11 Labs subscription. We've picked a voice that we think sounds really good for both male and female writers. 2 voices, one of each. And now people can opt to listen to the article. And where I work, project engineers sit at computers with their headphones on all day. They're just working with spreadsheets and diagrams and drawings and the like, and they're listening to podcasts. So we're hoping that we can get more exposure to our content by making it available for people to listen to.
It's a funny, it's a great example. Sue actually witnessed this a couple of weeks ago, where one of the team members created a video with the voiceover, and it was a synthetic voice, and it sounds amazing. But I got in there and I said, "Can I have the script so I can record the voice?" Because there was this absolutely, for me, a visceral kind of rejection of, I don't want to hear the synthetic voice. But what we're seeing also is the visuals within it. Now, in my industry with training and development, I mean, we're talking about the generation of courses now with the use of AI, where we're using programs like Synthesia. So you can produce the course outline, produce the timings, the content, then produce the script, give it to a Synthesia. Suddenly, you've got this great personality who's that's created, speaks very well without any stutters or ums or ers, and you get this polished result in record time. So what we're seeing is this huge content generation very quickly.
Yeah, we had.
By the way, before we go on, Adrian, Focus Communication says your voiceover sounded much better in the video than the AI one.
Oh, thank you, Focus.
That's my colleague who did actually use an AI voice on a video, and it came out surprisingly better than I thought it was going to. I thought it was going to sound really robotic, and it doesn't. So they've really come a long way with voiceover. However, I would echo Landon that indeed Adrian sounded better than Adrian. You sound better than AI, buddy.
Oh, thank you. It's not always like that, but scripting works really well because anybody that knows me, I have this habit of overthinking and going quiet and whatever else. But when you got the script, you just read it perfectly. That's lovely.
Yeah, we're time challenged where I work, so the idea that somebody's actually going to sit and record each of those articles, we don't have the time. AI is a good solution, and 11 Labs does really well. In addition to the fact that you can train it on your own voice. So at the IABC conference in June, I shared my voice reading one of my LinkedIn posts, both in English and in Danish. And Michael Nord was in the room, and he said, "That's pretty accurate." And so,
that's how I talk to my partner in Italian now. I just it's fine.
Well, I hear that more and more.
Learn Italian.
Yeah, people are using the AI translator tools just on ChatGPT and the like to have conversations with people that they could never talk to before because they don't speak each other's native language.
Yeah. They are really good these days, those translations. But things like Descript, and obviously, if anybody's used that one where you've got the transcription, if you make mistakes, you can take out a chunk and insert your voice without having to re-record it, and it's your voice. And I think
I used it to script about an hour ago.
Oh, did you?
Let's move on. How is the role of those of us working in this profession changing in a world where AI touches every part of the organization? I'll give you an example of this. I am involved right now in trying to convince people in our organization to experiment with this. This is all based on Ethan Mollick's proposition. If you're not following Ethan Mollick and you're interested in the use of AI in the workplace, I highly recommend it. He's a professor at the Wharton Business School who's writing extensively about this. But he says, it is an individual tool, and therefore it is up to every individual to do R&D and figure out how it's going to work for you. And our leadership is very interested in having people do this. And the polling we've done indicates that people aren't, even though there's a tool available to them for free with Copilot in the Edge browser. It's part of the Office 365 package. So how do you see our role changing when this is now something that every employee can use and maybe should use?
Well, I think what we've really kind of seen, and Adrian alluded to this a few minutes ago, is the whole idea of the sandbox training, right? So, and it really comes a lot out of the marketing side, where, you know, it's really about sandbox and the adoption of product, right? So it's been used in product development quite a bit. But the sandbox training is it's a safe space to play, is what it boils down to. And I know the center, we've been talking about putting stuff out there for it as well. But it goes through the basic concepts of whatever it is you're focused on, right? So one of the things we really had talked about doing is saying, to understand that this is in the role of AI as an assistant to you. How would you like to use that? So, you know, on the research side, and I think one of the comments that had come in, AI is good when you're in a research spot, right? Or you got brain freeze or anything else, a block that is going on. But you can use it as a sounding board. But, you know, define the space, define the sandbox that you're using it in, so that you can understand what it's coming up with and where it's coming from. And so that's a concept that we really would expect to kind of see in firms and organizations that probably have the maturity to put something like that in place.
And there's a question here from Patrick Quinn. Is it clear when you use free AI tools that company IP is being protected?
Ooh, Adrian, jump in.
It certainly isn't. It's funny. I've been running a whole lot of writing courses lately, which does my head in, but that's a whole new story. But since starting to run those programs, probably 18 months, 2 years ago, within the first few months changed entirely to say, hang on, from a writing perspective, absolutely fabulous. You've got this tool now that will help you with that and do all the corrections and whatever else. But a lot of the audience that I've had is certainly in government departments and so on. And I'm always having to be really clear. Whatever you put into AI is going external, certainly around things like ChatGPT and so on. It depends on the model that's being used. So you said it before, Shell, you know, is an internal LLM or is it an external like a ChatGPT? But we have to be careful and know exactly what that tool is doing and where it's getting its reference points from. So, you know, years ago you would trust things like Grammarly and so on. Now they've added the AI components to it. You're suddenly moved from going, well, I was actually quite fine with it, but now I know this is using AI. Am I losing some of my data, and am I protecting my data that's going out there? So it's a big question and a big challenge, but never assume that.
Yeah. And in our organization, we're now looking at it very holistically. So to give you an example, AI has been used in healthcare for quite a while. And one of the ways it's used, so with people who have our insurance, right? If they contact a customer advocate and they're seeking information on like, hey, I don't know, you know, my physician says I need to have this surgery, or I'm trying to figure out what to do about this. Someone who's a customer advocate can, using AI, pull in all this information about that person. So where before you were kind of going, well, what medications are you on? Or how many doctors do you see? Or have you had surgery before? Where it can pull in from all these electronic health records that we have access to, and it gives the customer advocate a more complete picture of someone's health. So that advocate can make a better recommendation for that person. Now that's just one application, but it's a really helpful one in the healthcare space. What our organization is doing more broadly, excuse me, is I want to say we're embracing AI. We're embracing it carefully. So when you think about an organization that is very much aligned with its business strategy, so you know that what we communicate and how we do it and how often we do it, how we reinforce the priorities and how the company is doing toward achieving those priorities, and what we want to make sure employees understand about that and how they see themselves in that. And then outside of communication, all these other divisions in the company are doing the same thing. Now, if they're looking at other applications for AI, we want to be responsible because of the intellectual property, because of information security, especially in the healthcare space and everywhere, but in the United States. And so we have a very complete process now where the right people, legal representative, information security, information technology, communications, all these different parts of the business, you can now put in a use case for what you want. So it's basically like an idea card. I want to use AI for the following purposes. This is how I think it'll save the company money. This is how I think it'll benefit us. This is how it frees us up to whatever that is. And then you have this very well-rounded approach to, does this make sense for our business? And then if so, then it can get approved. And to the point of like, is it going to require funding? Is it a third-party solution? Are we building this in how? What does that look like? To me, that's a really smart way to view that, because then it's just like I said before, the approach to your business strategy. If you're running your business and AI is going to be part of that, then you're taking a more responsible, thorough approach about what are all the things you need to be thinking about, not just comms, but every little thing that could impact your business when you start introducing AI into the workplace.
And I think that's really smart, Robin. I think that is the thing that companies need to get in front of. They need to put as Mary says, the sandbox or the puzzle box around what it is people can use AI for, what data they're allowed to share through AI and what they're not. Because I feel like if you just open the door and say, okay, here's all the tools, have fun, you're putting your organization at great risk.
Absolutely.
And so I think that you've done a great job as an organization in pulling in the key partners who need to have a part of that conversation that says, how are we using this? How are we protecting customer data, corporate IP, all that good stuff? And then, what will happen as a result of this? Yeah. Because, as we go forward, and I think it was, in fact, our friend Bonnie Caver who said at a session I was at, terms of service have even changed on a lot of platforms where, Dropbox, I think if you put something in Dropbox, they can use it. Well, golly, I don't know. Is that what they signed up for? So I think we have to be a little more eyes wide open right now.
Mm-hmm. And I think about something my boss, shout out to Dana, in case she sees this, something that she always says to the entire organization, which I think we would all agree with, which is regardless of whether you work, I'm mostly on the employee side, but if you're on the internal or external or somewhere in between within your organization, the bottom line is this: you have two responsibilities. It's like you're protecting and enhancing the brand, and you're mitigating risk. And comms, like at the bottom line, that's what we do, even on the internal side, because of the world we live in now, because of social media, because of all those things, and now AI. And so while we're talking about the broader organization from a comms perspective, all of that resonates with me a lot, because I agree with Dana, the boss. Those are the two bottom lines for us.
I'll add. I was just going to mention that there are a couple of ways that you can protect IP. One is that some of these frontier models actually have a setting in the settings where you can say, do not use this session to train a model. And if you trust that they're abiding by what they say they're doing, you can change that setting. Another is to scrub what you're sharing so that you are changing the name of the organization to Acme. And the names of individuals to John and Jane Doe. I do this all the time. The very first time I used ChatGPT, which was within a week or two of its release, 3.5 back in November of 2022, one of our executives had given me pages and pages and pages of bullet points that came out of an executive brainstorming session. It was a SWOT analysis. And he said, I need this synthesized. I need all of the duplication removed. I need a consistent voice. I need these categorized, not just strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, but within each one, categories of comments. I was easily looking at 2 or 3 days of work. And I went, So I went through it. I changed the name of the company and individuals and projects. And I basically gave ChatGPT the instructions the executive gave me. And then I pulled the results up in Word side by side with the original document because it miscategorized a few things, it mislabeled a few things. I had to make other changes. Then I changed all of the names back, and I gave it to him in about 4 hours.
Mm.
And by the way, I didn't tell him I used AI for this any
Yeah.
more than I would have told him I'd used Excel to crunch numbers. It was just a tool.
Exactly.
But-
And it's interesting though, Shell, and I've had this conversation with a number of people and nearly fallen off my chair, where they've said my organization bans the use of AI.
Oh, that's crazy.
They want to protect it, right? They've banned it. So I do everything on ChatGPT at home, outside of the work environment. The worrying fact, well, there's two worrying factors about that one. One, I'm banning it. It's a little bit like going 25 years or whatever it was ago when we launched social media. Wow, we're going to ban social media.
Oh, they banned the web once upon a time.
We probably should have. Yeah.
And telephone when they first came out.
Fax machines, email.
Yeah.
But the problem being that I'm going around the system. The company's banned it, therefore I'm taking company IP and I'm putting it there because it's about the thinking and the use of. And so going back to that original question about the role for communication professionals, and more than ever, and we've been banging on about this for years, haven't we? About moving from the tactician to the strategist, getting out of the weeds of communication, being the advisor. More than ever, this is such a critical role because of the reasons Robin said and Sue. What we need is to be part of those conversations within the organization about the usage of, about the education around using AI. So we should be embracing it to help the organization and help people within the organizations use it and trust it more. So that's where our role is fundamentally changing. And there's some of those sub roles, obviously, that prompt engineering is coming the biggest role and all of those types of things. But we really need to be part of that conversation.
I've been reading about this notion of shadow AI. It's not just that people are doing it at home; they're doing it on their phones while at work. But it is circumventing the official resources that are available. It's a subset of shadow IT, which has been around forever, but it's a serious problem. And the reason why these companies that are banning it should just establish policies and governance and get people engaged. By the way, there is one other thing that I do to protect IP, and I can only do it when I'm working from home because my company laptop won't handle it, but my turbocharged desktop over here with 2 3 terabyte solid state drives, I've installed Llama 3.1 on here, so I can ask anything I want and share any kind of proprietary company information there because it's not on the internet. It's not being used to train anything. It's confined to my box. So that's something else to consider.
But a great example.
Just to go back to when we were talking about tactician and strategy, because I think we're missing a significant milestone that occurred this year when Cisco came out with the AI Readiness Index. And in there, they identify, maybe not even from an organizational standpoint only, but more from this whole management of an ecosystem philosophy. But they do identify that before you leave the sandbox, right, you should be having the parts of the organization that include strategy, infrastructure, data, governance. You got all your policies, right? Talent, and then culture. So when I looked at that, and it's a really neat report. In fact, they have a little online assessment tool that you can use. But so many parts of the 6 areas that are in there impact a communication professional, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, directly, you can look at culture. So how do we get this readiness, right? When I've talked to a few people about this, in the last couple of months or so, and those of us who are old enough, we said we see so many similarities to the preparedness and readiness strategies we use for Y2K. And I think that in and of itself gives us something as a go-forward path to follow.
And just to add to that, what Mary and I had been working on in the last probably year or so around the AI. I mean, in a couple of hours' time, I'm doing a pilot with our AI forum at the center of a tool that we've been looking at, that where you can select the model, the LLM that you use. So whether it's ChatGPT 4.0 or whether it's one of the internal models, and there's a selection of about 6 different models. So it puts the user back in control of saying, okay, this is all sensitive, must be using within the organization, cannot go outside. So we're using this model in terms of the use of AI, but not every organization's the same. Like, others can use the external model. So what we've done is taken the understanding, the education of what a strategic communication professional does when they create plans, or we can create the different processes we do within an organization and then apply the right modeling to it. And I think this is where things are going now. Sharon, you talked about it too, is we've got to be able to have the environments that people can use, but we've also got to understand it. So when we are letting data go, when we are actually protecting organization data. So we need to be stepping into this and embracing it and educating more than we do, trying to prevent it.
Yeah, I think one of the ways to do that is by sharing stories of people who have used it effectively, ethically, and successfully, so that people can go, oh, now I get it. Right? When I tell people that I use it, I'll say, I'm going to interview somebody whose job I don't understand at all. These are the questions I've come up with. What am I missing? Or I'm going to communicate this change the organization is making with these arguments. What pushback can I expect? In other words, asking it to play devil's advocate. Very effective. And people, you can smell the rubber burning when I tell them that, right?
Well, I know with this AI that we're playing with at the moment, Sue's team's been playing with it as a test. And Sue said something the other day that said, can we give it to the younger members of the team and see if they can break it? I don't think you use those terms, but I knew what you meant is let them play with it, because they're going to look at it in different eyes than we're going to look at it as senior communication professionals.
Right. I'm just curious, is you the tool that you're using for that? Because I know it gives you the option to choose the model that you're going to play with.
This actually, it's a custom built. So we're working with an organization in the US, and we're using strategic communication as an example. So it's hopefully it's going to be a new product very shortly that we're going to put out to the market for communication professionals to use.
Oh, excellent. I can't wait to see that. If you were hiring right now, what would you look for in terms of AI expertise from a candidate coming into a communications department or a communications organization?
Can you ask good questions?
Yeah.
It's the role of the moderator,
Socrates.
So.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. It, honestly, that's really it, isn't it? It's about making sure that we can have people think critically before they jump on these platforms. Yes, they can, provide research assistance, they can inspire, but you still need to have that critical thinking to say, what problem am I trying to solve? What bit of that can AI help with? And what do I still need to figure out, the old-fashioned way? So I feel like, knowing what questions to ask AI, knowing how to use it to support what you're doing, not replace what you're doing, I think is going to be the critical skill.
Well, and Sue, I really like that. And I always marvel at how well you articulate things. I'm always like, just keep going. But I think that's so true that one of the things that we've been talking about at the center as well, of course, because it is right in sync with everything else, is that to understand the context for the relationship that the communication professional must have with this AI assistant. You can name the assistant, you can do what you want, but you know what? You are still the one who is accountable and responsible. And you have to teach it. You have to decide what it might know. And I think what is interesting about all of that is because when we come into things as a communication professional, it would be great if we could just give you, like we used to say, you go to a conference and if I can walk away with 3 takeaways, I'm good. Those days, they really didn't exist then, and they don't exist now because everybody's coming into that room at a conference or the relationship with AI from their own frame of reference. Mine is different than all of yours, right? And so this whole idea of owning the relationship and then understanding what that means, I think is key to, if I was hiring someone, I want them to understand what they don't know. In addition to what Sue had said about asking can you ask questions? Are you open to learning? Are you open to discovery? Right? Because that's what this is. It's a little walk on the wild side here.
I totally agree with that. And as you and Sue were talking, I was thinking the same thing. It's not just asking them, how would you ask these questions if you're using this? I want to know what questions are they asking me as part of the interview process? Because if they know I'm serious. Because if that's going to be, if AI is going to be part of their job, if it's going to be a tool that they can use as part of their job, I want to hear what things they're asking me, how thoughtfully they're approaching this, because that tells me whether they've done, what kind of research they've done, or have I just done it because it's fun and I've done the things that we've all done with our phones and our iPads because it's fun. It's like, but I want to hear what they have to say about how they would approach it, because that's going to tell me whether this is somebody I'm going to hire that is going to approach this thoughtfully and responsibly and all the things that we just talked about, or at least know what questions to ask me. If I don't know, I know what to ask because I know how important this is that we handle this well within our organization.
I'd love to flip this because I was really fascinated to hear what you would say about this, Robin, because you're in-house. I've got the consulting hat on, and I look at what I would want for the organization. Shell, I would love to get your opinion because you're working in-house, you're managing communication team now. What is it do you look for in new hires?
Well, I haven't had a new hire in a while, and my team is myself.
AI is doing all the work.
My team is myself and Rochelle Buckner, and we're a mighty team of 2. But if I were hiring, I would want somebody who has already played with it a little and understands the idea of prompting. But mainly, I'm looking for curiosity. I absolutely agree about critical thinking, but I was looking for that before AI. But I want somebody who's curious enough to explore new ways of using this to be more effective, to be better at the job, and to blow through the drudge work so that they can spend more time being strategic and creative and less time on the stuff that they need to. That is just boring and one of the things that's coming. I believe OpenAI plans on releasing it before the end of the year, is AI agents. And I should have probably clarified at the beginning of this conversation that we've been talking about generative AI, which is just one category. AI in one form or another has been around since, I think, the late 1940s. Alan Turing wrote a paper on this when he was still an active researcher. But agents are going to be able to perform multiple tasks in order to achieve an outcome independently. So for example, you will be able to say, here is my first draft of a press release. I need this press release reformulated for these different types of publications or media outlets. I need you to find the right reporters to pitch, to read the stuff that they have written so that you can write a pitch that is relevant based on the kinds of things that they are interested in, that they've been writing about, and then pitch them. and it just goes. The example I was giving somebody the other day when he was asking what is an AI agent going to do, and he had just gotten back from a vacation in Hawaii, and I said, well, you could say, book a vacation for my girlfriend and me in Hawaii. And it would check their calendars and find when they're both available. It would see where they've been before and maybe pick a different island, find the kind of resort it knows they like based on their prior travel. It will book the hotel, it'll book the flights, it'll book dinner reservations and tours, and just report back. Here's your vacation. Done. That's coming. Right?
Thank goodness. Thank goodness. Somebody's going to come and take all the drudgery out of what we do and leave us time.
Nirvana. Yeah. I'm in.
Yeah, one of the folks where I work said that they asked Gemini to book, I can't remember if it was a dinner reservation or an appointment at a hair salon, but it actually made the phone call and booked the reservation. So these are things that, I don't think most people who are talking about AI are talking about using, but it's going to be pretty routine here in the next few years.
Thank
goodness. We're seeing people using that now quite often. In fact, I've got a guy by the name of Dan Butcher who's works in the marketing space, and he's coming to give the forum a chat about the way that they're using AI in the marketing, in terms of that reach out for sales. So all of that is generated by AI to start getting the leads into the pipe. And it's not until it gets to almost the very end where they've had the conversation, they've booked them for the appointment, that the actual salesperson, the real salesperson, is talking to them on the phone. But all of that lead generation and upfront sales role is all being done by AI. But I mentioned this one because he was said, any questions, just talk to my assistant. And the assistant's got the phone number, and you can text them, and they will start having a conversation with you going, let me sort out a time you can speak to Dan and da-da-da. That's becoming more commonplace now, where people are interacting with that assistant who is AI and booking that time for you, or booking those reservations.
A question came in, this from Patrick Quinn. In my experimenting with AI, it typically says there is a right answer. What if the AI answer isn't right, or the answer is contested? How do you tackle that within your organization's use of AI? And, I think this predates ChatGPT's introduction. I know that one of the big issues when the Amazon Echo was first released was that it gives you one true answer. You go to Google and type in a question or a search request, and you get pages and pages and pages, and you can check them all. Even if you're using Perplexity AI, it's going to give you multiple resources that you can check. Right. But the Amazon Echo says, here's the answer. And it may not be right. It may not be the best answer. It may not be the answer that you need. So what do you do in your organization when the AI says this is the answer?
Mm-hmm. I think the prompt has to say, what are the pros and cons? That's just the argumentation, right? And that's argumentation falls right under persuasion in comm, right? All of us remember the fun in that course. But I think this gets back to what Sue and Robin and we've been talking about. You have to understand how to ask that question, and it's a sequence of questions. It's a sequence, a process that has to occur. And so if we think that we're just going to ask and it's not, we don't necessarily get the right answer when we as individuals interact in the communication process. You have probing questions, right? We have all of those same things. So the recommendation and part of the learning in the sandbox is, how do we have the probing questions? And in comms, that comes out of interviewing, right? So we have a lot of the things there. We have to just kind of pick the things and put them where they belong in the AI process.
We're actually out of time. We're down to about just a few seconds.
Oh, we're not done.
I know. It seems like that every month, doesn't it? But I just want to elaborate on that for 1 second, Mary, and that goes back to what we talked about earlier, and that's treat it like a person. If you were talking to an expert, you wouldn't ask a question, accept a single answer, and leave. You would probe. You would look for more information. You'd look for more details, and that's how you have to treat the AI. So I want to thank you. It's been a real stimulating conversation. I want to let everyone know that next month, the panel will be addressing the issue and the importance of mental well-being as we progress within our careers. The panelists will be Amanda Hamilton-Atwell, Ginger Homan, and Mark Schumann. And Brad Whitworth will be the moderator of this panel because I will be away. And I didn't put down the day and time of that, but it will be the third Thursday of September at, I believe, noon Eastern time. But watch Catalyst or the other IABC announcements for the official time and date of that conversation. Should be a good one. And with that, thanks, everybody. See you all next month.
Bye, everyone.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.